2 or 3 years, I remember.
Yeah.
Not so very recently though.
Are you enjoying them?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You're it's amazing the community that you've been able to build, you know, I guess it's the #1 challenge for any project, but it looks like you guys have kicked things off really well with that.
Yeah, we got fortunate with people we brought to the team, and just, I guess, like our product. I think a lot of it is like just people love the product. We managed to build something people enjoy using.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So pumped to have you here, and I'll kick things off formally and say thanks, Anton, for joining us at Decent Living today to chat about Sharky. Huge mints coming up next week. Big community. It's pumping. There's a lot of energy around this upcoming drop, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity just to like downshift a sec, just take a moment to chat about your journey here with the project, thoughts about the future of not only NFTs but NFT lending and liquidity, and also just like tap into the brain of someone who's doing some amazing things in the space. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to chat about that. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, look, just in general, I want to kick off. Let's talk about Sharky itself. Can you give me the pitch? What is it, and what does it do? So
yeah, I'll give like my mother pitch, like the pitch that I give to my parents. That's what I call it. So yeah, like I think imagine like in traditional world, basically you can go to bank and borrow funds and against your house, against your car, even against your watch. If you go to pawn shop, that's just like something that's available to you. You don't want to sell those things, so you can just get liquidity. Sharky is basically a platform that allows you to do the same, but using NFTs as the asset. So like instead of your house or your car or your watch, you can use those NFTs, use them as collateral, and borrow funds using our platform. Obviously, there is nuance. There's a lot of like details how exactly it works, but on a very high level, that's what it allows you to do. And unlike traditional finance, when you cannot typically be a bank, you cannot just like, hey, I'm going to start giving out loans. Like maybe you can do it with your friends, but not at scale, right? Sharky also allows you to make yield and allows you to give out those loans to people. So we kind of like manage two sides of the market. And if you don't need to borrow, you can provide liquidity and make yield. So that's another, I guess, second story of Sharky. And it's pretty attractive yields. So we like come check it out. I wouldn't show like a specific number because numbers.
I was just about to ask you. Sorry, you're not gonna...
They range, like I think yields range between like 70 and like 100+% APY. It's a volatile market, so it's not a risk-free yield. So beware. But yeah, that's how it.
I think like anyone, maybe except for like the new people coming into the space, but anyone who's investing in NFTs is kind of accepting a certain amount of risk in their investment anyway. So I think any opportunity to generate more income from something that's otherwise a pretty illiquid asset. So I know I've certainly been in the situation where you're holding on to this NFT that's mooned and so excited, and you see the floor price go up, but then try to flip it or try and move on, and it's a very, very sticky thing to get out of your wallet at times. So obviously, like there's a bunch of these platforms coming up, and you're somewhat at the forefront on Solana. It was something that I heard. I think it was Kevin Rose talk about mid last year, particularly at the the boom of Base C and obviously CryptoPunks and everything. These became legitimate assets that people were holding, and in the broader world, in the real world, that's essentially how people are holding who hold these big assets are earning their income or paying for their expenses, right? So you're really
Yep.
going after that in a big way. Is that focus on the problem like at the core, or what's the kind of the main thing that you're solving with Sharky?
Yeah, so main thing is just making this assets more financially viable. So it's not just like investment, it's not just like a collectible or both or fusion. There is also like asset that has inherent value that can be unlocked. Like, asset can only have value if you can sell it or leverage in some form. And there is clearly a huge traditional art market when you can just buy physical pieces of art and trade them and also borrow against them. Like you can like use them as collateral to unlock capital. And a lot of collectors do that because there's a lot of like interesting quote unquote tax schemes when you actually have debt. And those tax schemes usually basically savings on taxes are better than interest rates on loans in some cases. So that's incentive in the real world, like one of them. In this world, basically, if we want these assets to become at scale, there's 100% needs to be ability to unlock that capital locked in those assets without just trading, because they're non-fungible, right? The whole point is that trading has some sort of friction. They are not equal to each other. There's also emotions attached sometimes, or often, or utility. Like you can just be, getting access to some communities or something, or owning something that you don't want to let go. So our ultimate goal is to be this financial block. This is financial primitive that enables you to do like lots of other things with your assets, not just selling them. And we entered market with like borrowing and lending. So you can, like I said, like you can use NFTs collateral and borrow Solana, or you can lend Solana for somebody to borrow. But it's just the first step. So there's like many financial products that are coming. Most of them are debt oriented. So we want to be in the business of like issuing debt to helping other providers issue debt. And yeah, so that I think makes this market stronger if you do it in a responsible way. Obviously, we don't want like our leveraged market when there's too much liquidity locked in debt. But I think some leverage is necessary for market to kind of like become more efficient and like grow faster.
Well, and there's also no real gains, or gains don't exist without risk, right? So
right.
Hopefully with platforms like yourselves who are invested in this in a legitimate way, you can educate the people who are using it and and help them make the most of it rather than get wrecked on lending out their gods, as I've seen in the last couple of weeks, and getting particularly before the the big pump up. How do you bring this to life? Like, who's in the team? What's their background? What does the behind the scenes of Sharky look like?
Yeah, so right now we're a team of 9 full-time and one person part-time. So we've grown quite a bit. I have a co-founder, Ria. So it's at the top, I guess, it's just 2 of us. It's co-founders, and the rest is our core team. We started back in December. We attended like second ever organized Solana hackathon. Was in Miami. That was a lot of fun, and kind of like we had ideas like what to build before, and I think there we kind of just like refined like whether we want to be on Solana, whether we want to be like in this space in general, and like what exactly we want to build. What we did know back then is we want to be in NFT space. We're like super bullish on NFTs. It just intuition and told us that like this space is gonna grow no matter what. So the question was like what we want to build, and I think we discussed this a bunch with like some friends and some other like folks in this space. But ultimately, we wanted to build something long-lasting. So like, and that led to more kind of like serious financial product thinking versus just launching a game or launching something that like is experimental. So we kind of like made a sense like, okay, we're here long term. Like, do we feel good about the space? Yes. So let's commit to something that's lasting. And yeah, and we looked at Ethereum at the time. Like, it was interesting. On Ethereum was one protocol. Now there's like probably like 30 protocols on Ethereum trying to build some sort of like lend and borrowing. And yeah, we looked at this, and our first thought was, well, you know, the best art in the world is invented, created, and the second best art is stolen and copied.
Or the best art is,
like,
you know, the best art is stolen then invented. You know, that's the third option. Yeah.
So we realized like that product that was on Ethereum has product market fit, at least to some extent, clearly. And we're like, well, maybe we should just copy it. And for maybe first months, we thought like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. Let's how we would build this on Solana. And then while learning more about Solana and how is it different and all that, we realized that, wait a sec, we can build like much better experience. We don't have to like work around all this like slow transactions and like expensive like fees and all that. And then we also challenged ourselves saying like, okay, there are clearly issues in the user experience. We try to use the platform on Ethereum. Like, clearly it's surprising, basically. User experience was not to our standards, so it was surprising that people use it. It was like very painful, I think, to understand and use it. And we're like, we can do better. And so we tried to like rework our model, and that ended up positioning us really well, not just like for better user experience, but for growth and scalability. But yeah, we quickly kind of like realized like on Solana, there is nothing. Back in December, there was no protocol. Nobody was doing this. Then in January, we realized there is like some teams are building that as well. But we're like, okay, we'll be one of the first ones.
You're being very diplomatic, like not mentioning anyone, and I guess you don't want to give them airtime as well. I mean, there's plenty of banks. There's not like you know, there's only one bank that people use, or there's one pawn shop on the other end of the market. You know, it's
right. Yeah. I don't like bad-mouthing projects. Like, I do respect everyone who builds in the space, and like especially first comers. But the truth is, I still felt pain, and I still felt like experience is not great, and I wanted to build something better.
And there is no market for something new like this unless there's a bunch of different players all working at the same time. It's very hard to build in a vacuum and to create innovation and a startup when there is no awareness of the actual problem to begin with, let alone how people can use it. So the idea that you've got some options now and there's some people doing things in different ways or trying, that's certainly a boost to anyone who's taking on this area of NFT liquidity. Yeah,
for sure. And it's a market where if there's one winner, it's kind of like bad for everyone. I think this market will always have competition, and hopefully it will be like healthy, kind of like, we'll find our like niche, and by niche I mean like multi-million-dollar niche market. But yeah, so I think it will be like 2, 3, maybe 4 protocols that kind of like divide this market.
What does what's exciting about this for you? What's the thing that because I'm sure you've had some pretty long nights and some pretty stressful times, but what is the thing that kind of keeps you coming back for more?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because Sharky is my third company. I've been building in general for the last 16 years professionally, like as engineers, like CTO, head of engineering, kind of like all these kind of roles, like startup founder, of course. So I'm very technical myself, like engineer by all means. And if I were to describe this company to somebody, just like let's assume Sharky is a Web2 company, I would never just like found a company that does loans in traditional world. To me, it's like boring as hell. I like building companies that just have tangible impact, that change something for the better, and that impact is like perceivable. So, like, for example, before Sharky, I worked in education. Like, my mother is a teacher, and I worked in a startup. It wasn't a startup I co-founded, but I was like head of engineering, so I built a team there and kind of like influence the product as much as I could. And that was like kind of like helping kids learn computer science, mathematics online. and that was very fulfilling because I felt the impact. Like it's not like go to Coursera, do this kind of like classes. It's kind of like it was very one-on-one education. So like I literally like knew kids that went through programs and like impact it made on their lives, and that's to me is very, very fulfilling. So finding like another like LinkedIn club in Web2 to me would be like I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And the reason it's exciting, I think, there are two things here. The whole Web3, I think, is about community, is about building new economies, building collectively with people, raising funds from public, from like just people like you and I, and not just like VCs and people like that have like very deep pockets. Like anybody can be investor, everybody can be supporter, and you truly embrace this. So that space is very rewarding in that sense. Plus NFTs, it's such a wild space. It changes so quickly. And when I talk to my friends, like they're like, yeah, sure. Like startups also, like, startup scene changes so quickly. Why is it different? I'm like, well, you don't understand. Like quickly means it changes like every week. It's not months. I'm not exaggerating. Like today, it's like like a new method, like doing this. A week from now or 2 weeks from now, it could be completely different. Now people are funding royalties and so on or whatever. And then like suddenly like other things change and the community reacts very quickly. The density of this space is very high, but that's also exciting. So like I like this, for me personally, I like this kind of like things change and you need to adapt and learn them. And kind of like, I think it's our teams and my advantage to be able to do it.
Well, because it's the leverage in the NFT world is culture, right? So it's the startup, it's innovation, it's the Web2, I guess, the lean startup methodology, build fast, fail fast kind of stuff. But it's leveraged by culture, and that culture changes on a dime. What's trending, what's the meta, is so fluid in the cultural sense that you add that to innovation and people trying to build stuff that fits the culture or moves with the culture. That's what it gets the dynamism. And that's why I'm so excited about it from a business innovation point of view. Being on the building side, I don't envy someone who's trying to fit, a product to that. But what I am really impressed with Sharky is the community and what you're talking about in your previous startup of building one-to-one relationships with people. You've essentially done that through your community in Sharky and got some great mods who are working there. How's the journey been so far? Can you just give us a really brief recap of particularly, I guess, the last 9 months plus, is it?
Yeah. So I think probably something like this.
Or 9 months. It's really about 5 years in a NFT sense, right? Yeah.
I would say 9 months had high highs and low lows. It's like, I don't know. I've never been so in such a like drastically like volatile space, in a sense, not just financially volatile. Like Solana went from like, I bought my first Solana at like 30, then it went to 250, then it went to 30 back.
And you're still holding the same bag as well, like me.
Yeah, I'm not one of the smarter ones that sold at 250. There are a lot of my friends did and sold me too. I was like, okay, when I bought Solana, I was like, I'm gonna hold for like 3 years plus, no matter what happens. That's kind of like, investment thesis. If I start trading, then I better do it full time. So I don't like this like middle ground of like, oh, like sell when everybody tells you like buy it, then I'm gonna be sad if I made a bad trade. I'm just not good at like going halfway. So I'm like, I'm just gonna hold. But it still hurts to see. But yeah.
But I think one soul's one soul, right?
Yeah. That's why we like Sharky works in Solana. So we don't do USDC loans or any other like currency yet, at least not yet. So we're Solana native, but kind of like for this universe, because like one soul is one soul here, kind of. But yeah, so last 9 months, I think there were lots of ups and lots of like downs. When we started, like space was just like super high bull market, like so lots of kind of like that kind of like energy. and we built like and released like our first product like to market, and like market crashed and everything went to like really dark place. And despite that, we've grown, but it was hard emotionally, like on the team, like on everybody, kind of like we're growing, but markets are hard, fundraising is hard, everything is hard. So, and that was kind of like taxing. So we had a couple of months when everybody felt like, it's like felt depressed, but felt demoralized with just like what's happening in the space. It just like the difference between like how it felt in January and how it felt in July was so drastic, because like January is like, we're all gonna make it, all of this energy, and July is kind of like everybody's quiet and getting quieter and quieter.
Yeah, where'd that all go? Yeah, I was sure
right.
that I was going to make it back in September, October last year. Wow. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, and then plus there's a lot of community kind of like, people can FUD you if you don't ship too quickly, or if you ship too quickly. This is like literally like any narrative, anything you do, it's so visible that you constantly combat and kind of like either lots of positivity or lots of negativity, depending like just like on the day and like market. We were lucky that we didn't have that much FUD or like negative like things to combat through. But there's clearly, lots of our partners and teams that we partner with like went through all this like fluctuations as well. So it's a bumpy road last 9 months. And right now we're in this period that I'm fully realizing, like we're in the very hype period when product has grown massively, user base has grown massively. We're like pre-mint and people are excited and it's all going like really well. So like clearly we're on the rise, but like the best thing and the worst thing about life is that it changes. So like that period will change to probably like maybe a worse one, and we need to be prepared. But yeah, I would everybody who I invite.
Can I take you off on a tangent there, just as you mention it? Like, how do you shore up your house? How do you make sure those things are in place? Because this is probably a good point for anyone who's building a project, particularly one of size. Like, how are you going about making sure that you can ride those the inevitable waves?
Yep. So right now we're doing two things. Like I'm trying to secure more capital for us so we have runway for longer than a year. And I think before we're just like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like we'll have runway for like a year. Raising in this market is so easy until it's not. And so that just feels safer. Like I like people on the team feel like, okay, we have enough. And capital doesn't mean fundraise. Like capital right now we have strong revenue. So like capital could mean like, hey, we don't need to raise ever again because we have enough revenue to scale the company. So that's part of the plan as well, because like raising is also stressful, and you cannot raise forever. So we're trying, and I like building companies that have revenue and users, like paying customers from day one. So that was our thesis, like immediately. And yeah, so that's important for emotional safety, stability, kind of like for everybody knowing, like, well, if I stay with Sharky, like we are good for like year plus or more or forever. It's important for kind of like this climate, if it makes sense. Because when you deal with volatile market outside, you don't want your company also to be volatile inside. You want at least have some stability. So that's important, and that's our priority. And second, I try to shield people I work with and kind of like I know I have a very thick skin and like resilience to stress and kind of like all of this. So like I usually try to just with my calm attitude and just even-headedness spread the word, kind of like, hey, market is bad, but then look at the positive sides, and this is what's going to happen. And I think the strategy there is to just address the worst case. It's like acknowledge this and talk about this. Like let's say like, hey, the worst case, I don't know, like somebody hacks our protocol and steals millions of dollars, and like we all go out of business. Sure, look at your skill set. Well, like, yeah, that's going to be bad, but likely it's going to be bad for me and like my career, like for our reputation. But like you all amazing, employable people, you're going to be fine no matter what. It's going to be, obviously you're attached to this company and the team, but like life is not ending there. And that's the worst outcome. So now let's talk what's likely to happen and let's check upsides. So I think just talking through that helps with team climate and kind of like helps people understand that there's a strong leader like here that they can rely on, that I will show as much as I can and always be transparent and kind of like give people more than necessary, I would say.
Are
To
you,
feel
are you,
good. And
are
yeah,
you pretty much centralized as a team, or you spread out, all around the world? What's the kind of geographic setup?
we spread out. We have, so Bria and I, co-founders, are in San Francisco. I'm moving around, so like it depends on the day where I'm at, but like my official address and like favorite city is SF. There are a couple of folks in different parts of United States, kind of like on East Coast and like in the middle. There are folks in Philippines, Serbia. Yeah, I think that's it. They're like pretty distributed in that sense.
I wanted to ask about the mechanics behind Sharky. Obviously, you're quite a technical founder. You're able to bring a lot of skills and true innovation to the problem that you're building. What have been the things that kind of give Sharky its X factor? What's its kind of special sauce in terms of technology?
Yeah, for sure. I think in technical terms, like special sauce is this concept of order book that we have, but there is lots of nuance layered on top of it. I think in non-technical terms, was the special sauce is extreme razor focus on user experience. And it's not just, usually people think, oh, it's like just building better UI, right? Like you just like hire people who can build good UI, I don't know, React engineers, like stuff like that. This has nothing to do with UI. UI is an afterthought.
As in making it look fancy, right, or making it look, yeah, right.
Yeah, UI doesn't matter that much. Like Craigslist, my favorite example, or Amazon, is like, UI is nightmare.
Terrible. Yeah.
But user experience is good in a lot of ways. It's not perfect, but it's good. And that's why people use it, because it solves the problem. So this extreme focus on user experience with some innovation, I think that's the special sauce. And what we mean by that, if we looked at current market, like we looked before, there are two different types of protocol usually people think of when they say like NFT lending, people who are exposed to it. Like I described before, kind of like pawn shop style. When you go to pawn shop and you're like, hey, can I borrow against my watch? And then like that person decides. And that's usually seen as like peer-to-peer lending. In crypto, it's usually like in the NFT space, it's kind of like a little bit different than pawn shop. You kind of like come into pawn shop with your offer. It's like, hey, I want this loan. You put it on like offer board. And then the other side of like lenders would come in, like check your notes and like, okay, sure, like I will fund this one. So that's kind of like peer-to-peer, kind of like how it works, kind of like custom evaluation of contracts and like these deals. Obviously, it's not instant, right? Like you cannot just get a loan immediately. And that's not ideal user experience. Like a lot of, if we truly want to breach NFTs and DeFi, loans need to be instant. It's okay to have non-instant loans when you want like a really, really high loan, like you've taken millions of dollars in debt and you have like super rare NFT and high price like asset that you want somebody to appraise manually, then sure. But 95% of users don't care about that. They just want liquidity on reasonable terms. So that's one side of the story. And two, in this market, capital is a problem. Like, you know, like everybody faces kind of like, how do we attract lenders? How do we attract liquidity? Because if you're making enough yield, lenders will come. So it becomes a question, how do we make enough yield? And it's chicken and egg. So I mentioned two types of protocols. So second type of protocols is this bank. So unlike pawn shop, in bank means you have all the liquidity, you issue all the debt, so you take all the risk. And it's really challenging to be this bank because then you're taking all the risk and you need lots of capital. So we kind of like stand in between. The secret sauce that we have is like we're a hybrid between the two. We're kind of like trying to bring the best of both worlds, again, with certain trade-offs, but that's our goal. And we're making it instant loans for borrowers and high yield for lenders. So kind of like you don't have to choose, you can have both with Sharky. And the way it works, we create this competitive environment. So instead of you come in and like put in your terms as a borrower and saying like, hey, this is the loan I want, we reverse this model and saying like, what if we make lenders compete for borrowers? What if we make lenders offer terms that they think are reasonable? Not for specific NFTs, but kind of like for categories of NFTs. What makes this whole system works is that NFTs are grouped in collections. And you can kind of like evaluate the price of any NFT in collection with certain trade-offs. And then that creates a market when lenders can just say like, well, I will lend this amount, like 10 Solana for this NFT. And somebody would say like, well, my risk profile is higher, I will lend 11. And that creates this competitive environment. And also serves as price discovery, right? Like we know the price of how much people are willing to risk per collection upfront. So that's also a very strong signal. And then after realizing that we want to build a system, the next logical step was like, what would be the good system to create this fair competition? And we landed on this like concept of order book. It's a one-sided order book. It's kind of like, think about like a set of offers of bets ordered by amount. It's not really an order book in that sense. It doesn't have like second side of it. And that's how it works. Like basically lenders come in, decide per collection, like how much they want to provide liquidity. And if they outbid everybody else, if they put the best offer, their offer would get taken sooner. So they start making yield faster.
It's it's very much like it's an auction setup in a way, right?
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of like an auction. Like how much would you lend, and if you win, and you lend faster.
There's another small company that built a little business on doing auctions for ads. I don't know if you heard of Google, but I think there's a proven business model in incentivizing people to trying to find the best price.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this model is it also allows us to manage risk better. Like we don't have to be a bank anymore, because right now with Sharky, I think some aspect that I didn't mention before, if somebody defaults on the loan, you as a lender get NFT. So it kind of like ensures that your funds are not getting, like stolen or anything happens to them, and it's over collateralized, right? So like presumably price of collateral is higher. Obviously it's a volatile market that can change, but it's very, very unlikely that you will lose like entire asset, right? That it will go to zero. It can drop by like 20% or something, but there's still some insurance there. And yeah, we can then decide like, do we want to compete with everyone and be a lender? How much do we want that? Like, and be kind of like in the middle, provide our own liquidity to some extent and take as much risk as we would like to. And everybody else can do the same. It's a fair, completely transparent system. We don't control any like who can come to the platform and do what and to which extent. But yeah, so that's a long way to explain.
I'm glad someone who's got your technical background is taking this on. It's like, but these are the complicated, complex problems that we need big brains taking on in order to transition, this small but concentrated niche of NFT investors, let alone Web3, which is still, very much emerging, into something that actually has impact on a real life scale. And this is what, I still get a kick out of every time I sign a wallet, and it's like, it's just magic, like, and the way that we've been able to build decent living, from in a decentralized way, trying to look at another way for us to build a decent life for ourselves through decentralized finance, through Web3. It just couldn't exist without these tools, but there needs to be a moment where it transitions into our real world. So, we're using it every day on our phones. It's the infrastructure behind our financial lives. What is your vision for how we're moving into the real world? How Web3 is actually going to turn into, a legitimate epoch in technological evolution?
Yep. I think this way of building companies is here to stay. I think the best part about Web3 to me, it's not crypto, it's not blockchain infrastructure. I think that is a fascinating, amazing technology that it just, impressed that we build this and we improving and kind of like making this work. But what excites me is like the way it transformed the way we build companies. It's very community focused. It's very collective kind of like ownership focused. It's very open, transparent, like all of these principles. And it's a lot of fun. I think it's a very perceivable difference between like, Web 2 and Web 3. So I think this is there to stay. I think it will just become the norm and like expand further and further. It's kind of like a little bit bubbled. Web3 is often associated with like crypto NFTs and all of this space. It doesn't have to be. Like, I think Web3 has to, but this way of building company doesn't. If I start my fourth company in, let's say, non-crypto world, I would definitely try to run it similarly. It's just going to be more challenging because there is no infrastructure to incentivize and support this. There is no culture of like, like building people's discords and like be managing your community, but it can be done. And yeah, so I think that's how it kind of expands slowly. There will be like lines between like Web 2 and Web 3 companies will become blurrier and blurrier, and like kind of like that will just help the world from that sense. And then NFTs, I think, is the biggest thing that will happen, biggest bridge that will be built, and it's already been built. Kind of like a year ago in August, most people haven't heard that I talked to, haven't heard about NFTs. Like when I was like, hey, I'm like considering like working in the space, in NFT space, like what's NFT? Now random people I talk to, vast majority knows what NFT is, at least to some extent. And that's a massive difference in education. And I don't talk to just to my bubble. I meet lots of new people not from tech. And yeah, I just mentioned them and like, okay, I don't know how much you know, but like I'm in this space. Like, have you heard of NFTs? And like, yeah, I've heard, but like I don't, like most people don't own them, but they at least understand conceptual. And yeah, so that kind of like will drive this change, I think. And yeah, well, even next year, even next 12 months, we'll see huge plays there. We'll see a lot of like utility that we haven't seen before. It's coming. I know. I know lots of companies that are going to bring masses to NFTs.
Yeah, we're going to go beyond the hyped JPEG movements. That'll still exist, no doubt, but like being able to truly use the technology in a in a real world sense is where it's inevitably where we're heading. The things that the mechanic behind what we're doing here. There's an old startup, old kind of Web 2 saying of economies of scale, where you're trying to get to that moment. But what we're really doing is building economies at scale. There's all these different little groups of people that you can incentivize with real world money, and that's been the missing link. And even now in the social sense, it's all about capturing your audience. We're still defaulting to email list. We're still doing that. Even, Web3 companies are doing it. But what the missing link has been and what empowers us in Web3 is that we can attach the financial element to it. And that is really why, a big motivator for a lot of people. And this is like, it's a brute segue into talking about your mint, because I know it's not all about the financial side, but it is something that hooks people in and gets them excited about things. And you've got this incredible community already built up. There's some great mechanics around what you're doing in the upcoming mint. So I'd love to give you some time just to talk about the mint in particular and what you're excited about and what the community is excited about.
Yeah, for sure, and thank you. Shameless mint show.
Yeah, why not? Last couple of minutes, let's make it happen.
Yeah. I think what I'm excited the most is not our utility, not our, not even art, which I'm like super excited about. I think what I'm most excited about is principles behind why we're doing this, and how that will shape our product, and how it will shape perception. We're a very principled company from day one. Like again, I would mention, like I built 2 companies before. I'm not here to, get rich and retire, even though that would be nice. I would enjoy that, but I'm not looking for retirement. I'm not building companies to sell them, if it makes sense. I'm building companies because it's something I believe in, and I'm building communities because it's something I enjoy. I want to be part of it. I want to be, one of the leaders in that community that can help elevate a lot of people. Ultimately, it motivates me to see people grow. It motivates me see results of that growth. Like I worked in education. Similarly, if I can share my experience, if you can like make somebody rich or make somebody more educated, make somebody happier in any way, it's just innate motivation. That's something that's super, super rewarding. And that's, I guess, like why I'm in this space in general. And the reason for us to drop NFT is because it's the best way to build this community and make it stronger and share benefits, and give people opportunity to share success with us, not by just using platform, but it's kind of like adding oil into this fire, but like amplifying the usage, like first of all, proven with your own funds that you believe in the company and kind of like building this community of believers, and then us sharing back, and building synergies and using this to create like meaningful economy that works, like a well-oiled machine, and kind of like, and that community can really, really drive product growth forward, and that benefits everyone. So like, the synergy of like community-driven product given back to community is only possible in Web3. I don't think it's something like that exists in traditional startup world. And yeah, so that's what I'm most excited about, like how we can shape this and how we can apply these principles. And then for specific, like our first step to approach that, like besides just like launching an NFT project, it's like one, it's going to be like really, really cute art. There's already art preview on our Twitter. It's a cute sharks. It created design is led by my co-founder Ria. So it's all in-house, and there's also 2 more designers on the team. So 3 of them worked really hard on that and still working. It's coming up. I'm sure we'll be working till last minute. Because with art, it's always like, oh yeah, there's like 2 pixels on the left that nobody will ever notice, but I just like, no, we have to
let it go.
No. So yeah, we wanted to really focus on good art and create something that community would love. And the amount of like fun art we received is like just mind blowing. Like my favorite channel in Discord is like our fun art channel that I just go and like copy images and send to all my friends, and they think I'm super weird, but I'm like I cannot just not be excited about that. And we also obviously creating lots of utility for holders. It's not just like, hey, cool art. And utility on our NFT project is twofold. One, all NFTs will produce this token that we call fishy, sharks, fishy tokens. And that fishy token can be used to grow sharks. So it's an upgradable NFT. So feed your sharks fishy and they will grow. And different tiers of NFTs will give different benefits. We still haven't announced what are the specific benefits. But since they will produce certain amount of fishy tokens, and that token can be used to unlock some platform benefits. For example, we built a lot of lending tools that gives us an edge, kind of like what I call professional lending tools, like analytics, better user interface, and kind of like all of that. And we already have this working. I've been dogfooding this because I'm one of the biggest lenders on the platform as well. And I realized that we just need to release this to public. We just need the opportunity for serious lenders to use that. And that will be token gated. So like it's subscription based, kind of like you can use basic interface if you're just trying. As soon as you want to do it daily, just subscribe in our token and get access to that. So that's for lenders. For borrowers, not necessarily for everybody. There are NFTs that default, like somebody that just cannot repay loan, and if we are the lender as a company, we get custody of that NFT, then we will raffle those out and liquidate through that. So basically everybody can participate in raffles in our native token, and often those NFTs are discounted. So raffles will be cheaper than any other raffles you can find on the market. And future we also auction those out. at also at cheaper price. So that's a pretty substantial benefit, because with our current volume, we're giving out 700 loans per day. Our default rate is like 3% or something like that. So it's not all loans obviously given out by us, but we as a company probably will get 5-10 NFTs at default per month at least. So that is a good volume of raffles and auctions for holders, and it will only grow. And we will allow lenders to also raffle it out, everybody else who is not us. Like, you can sell it or you can raffle it in native token. And another major kind of like vertical of benefits, we'll also do gamified revenue share. It's a first of its kind revenue share. So the principle is similar to what I described before. We don't want to just do passive revenue share. Of course, it's the dream to get like passive income and do nothing, but I think it's not sustainable for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
So what we want to do instead, we want to gamify revenue share, where game rules are built in such a way that the more you use the platform, the more revenue you get, and or the more sharks you own at higher levels. So incentivize to hold more sharks, upgrade them, and use the platform. It will always be skewed towards platform usage, because ultimately that's the goal in the synergy. And yeah, basically it rewards biggest supporters, investors, users, and whoever is more active and contributes more value to platform and community gets more revenue. So that's how economy is structured on that just broad strokes. And yeah, so that's the utility we release, and I think it's going to be pretty massive. And I can't even still comprehend the amount of hype we got. I was worried like how easy or hard it will be for us to just build this community and kind of like sell out on our project and like all of that. But the amount of like excitement we got from people, from public and from pre-sale investors and all of that, it's just mind-blowing. By a factor of 5, I would say. My estimate was way off, which is amazing. But now I'm super excited to see what happens next. Yeah.
Hopefully that energy will ride you through the inevitable tough period when you back to really building and back to the grassroots of building this great startup of Sharky. I want to just thank you so much for spending an hour of your time when you've got a laundry list of things that no doubt need to be done before your mint. Is there a date set? Is there any details that you want to that you can just list?
We haven't set the date. We're trying to commit to something on Monday, like figure out like what would be the date on Monday. But yeah, so don't know yet, but it's likely going to be either next week or a week after next one.
As I say, no tips on. Follow along. Anton, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I love chatting to people who are really building in this space, particularly those who are in it for the long term. But it's been a great chat, and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. We'll see everyone soon.